Today on Woodturning, we're going to be playing with some Micronuts.
Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Easy Wood Tools, best-in-class carbide wood-turning tools. So a fellow woodturner, Rick Maxfield, came up to my booth at SWAT and said, "Here, have you ever turned one of these?" And I said, "What is it?" And he says, "It's a beetle nut. B-E-T-E-L. Beetle nut, beetle nut, beetle nut." No, doesn't work. Okay, anyway, it's a really cool nut. Don't know where it comes from. If you want to find one, you're going to have to look for it on the internet yourself. They're tiny, aren't they? But they have this really cool pattern on the inside. And this one came out a little darker. I think it's got a different pattern inside, but I'm hoping this one will be lighter. But they're just the tiniest, neatest things to hollow out. And when you want to hollow out something little, you need little tools. So we have to make our own little special tool here that has every angle on it necessary that a tool needs to do hollowing. And how do we make that? We make it out of something really dramatic and really rare. A hex key. So I have one down here because the first thing I want to do is I need to make the hex key a little bit shorter, because if you make your tool and grind that part there, there's way too much pressure pushing on that tip when you're hollowing. Even on something that small, if that's hanging out too far, it's too much. So we're going to cut this off right here, and then once it's cut off, we're going to go over to the grinder and shape it. So to make this into a cutting tool, we have to grind several edges. So here's one I've already done. The first grind we're going to do is the flat surface on top, right? Then we're going to come in and cut in on the edges here, because you want this to angle down just like you would on a scraper. Then the last thing we're going to do is on this side flatten this out, because this will be sitting on the tool rest, and that little bit of flat will help you control this tool. It's surprising how catchy and grabby this little tiny tool can be when you're hollowing out a beetle nut. Now before we get started here, I want to thank our sponsors, Robust Lathes and Easy Wood Tools, because without their support we would not be here doing these videos, and that would suck. And I am also an authorized Robust dealer, so if you're looking for a lathe, give me a call. So this is what we call overkill. I need to make sure that the bottom on this is perfectly flat, and they were already flattened a little bit, but I noticed this one was off some, so I'm going to bring my sanding disc up here. I need a perfectly flat bottom, but I don't want to waste too much of it either. So that looks pretty good right there. I've got a little bit more to go. And you also want to make sure your orientation is such that it's not wasting the nut, that you're not crooked or whatever. And I'm using 80 grit here, and that leaves that a little bit textured. So when we glue this in a minute, that'll give us a good grip. So I have a piece of Purple Heart mounted here with a tenon on it. And I'm using that as my glue joint. And you can see on here I had a piece of walnut on the bottom of this one. Kind of hard to see, it's really close. But it gives it some nice shape and it looks good, so why not use this with it? Brian can probably see it better than I can show with that camera. But you see how it's white in here? I've been using this sanding disc to flatten it, and it's not touching that, so it's telling me it's concaved in. So I need to turn the lathe back on and take my parting tool and make a cleaner cut and see if I can get a little bit straighter. If anything, I'm going to err on the side of making it come out too much. So when I do this sanding process, let's just turn this on, move this out of the way real quick. We got a flat disc here with a piece of sandpaper, spray adhesive to it, and you can see now I'm getting closer to getting it right. So once I get a uniform color across this, then I can glue the beetle nut onto the wood. Okay, so I've narrowed this down to almost the same diameter as I have on the bottom of the nut right here. If you get this thing off 1/16 of an inch, you might wind up wasting a lot of the nut, so it's a little bit tricky at this point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some medium cyanoacrylate. You don't need a lot because it's going to spread out pretty quickly. I'm going to bring this in here. Now the medium gives me a little more working time, so I'm going to put that on here, and now I'm going to bring up a little block of wood here. Just a little spacer filler for me. I had a hole in there somewhere. There it is. Put this right here, because this is crooked on the top, right? So by doing this, I'm putting pressure, and let's see, it gives me a chance to put pressure on the top without shifting the base, if that makes any sense. If I just put the tip of that live center in there, that looks pretty good. It could shift this sideways and stuff. By doing this little block, you see how it went crooked? It's just kind of fitting itself to the way the Beetle is, the nut's presenting itself. So I'm going to turn this a little bit more, slide it just a bit more. Every time you mess with it, you just screw it up even more. Now it looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to grab some accelerator, just to anchor myself in there. And we'll let that set up for a couple minutes. Then we'll start turning the nut. Okay, that looks pretty sketchy. I put my Robust Tools 3-inch tool rest up here. I love this little thing because I can get in tight on something. I'm using a spindle gouge, and I'm going to just take very, 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 very light cuts. Rick, is it Rick? Yeah, I think it's Rick. Ken, it is Rick. Trying to remember his name, Brian. Thank you. Rick suggested, he said, when you make the shape of the vessel, you also want to make it down into the foot here, because inevitably this little sucker is going to let loose and fly off, and you're going to have to re-glue it. Well, if you don't have the base established, you won't know exactly where to put it, so it helps you recenter yourself. So I'll keep that in mind as I go. Knock on wood, the practice one I did not fly off, but you know how that goes. Oh, that's turning nicely. Let's see here. This is really cool. It's kind of like turning a plastic. I would use an easy wood on this, but I was so scared that a scraper is a little more of an aggressive attack, and so I wouldn't want it to knock it off. I think I could probably use it with a negative rake, but I'm already committed to using a spindle gouge, so we'll go that route for right now. So here's my base. I'm going to establish that. I don't want to get too crazy here. Okay, we're almost blended in. I gotta get rid of that glue mark there. I got my glasses on that had cheaters in them. It really helps. Now remember, this is so tiny. Shape is very important. You want it to look good. So there, I think that's looking good there. Come in, sweep this down a little bit more. You also want to have really good tool control and not leave any tool marks, because you're going to have to sand this sucker too. That's looking pretty good. Now we could make this a really fancy hollow vessel, but we're not going to. I want you to see the inside. Oh, look at that. That is incredible looking. Oh, that is beautiful. Okay, so my next step, I'm going to sand a little bit here and do a little bit of polish on there to shine it up. So, how do we hold the little things we're making to go into there? Well, this is a cool little doohickey. Honestly, I think I found it at Harbor Freight or something like that. But it's for holding files. So you can stick a file in here, screw the handle down, it holds it. Well, right now I'm going to use it to hold a drill bit, because I want this drill bit, see, I'm going to get in there to hold it. It's going to hold that for me so I can drill a hole in here. I've marked my depth already, right? So like with any hollowing, you want to drill a hole in the center to make it easy. So start this up, and there's a camera in the way, so I'll see if I can look around here, find the center if I can. Find the center if I can. We're getting there. Ha! I know what I need to do. Hang on one second. I never put a dimple on it. So we'll get a dimple. Don't you love this? And very carefully, we're going to come in here with a parting tool and make a center. And now I've got the center marked. Duh. So this little, still can't see around the camera. Drill bit goes in center-wise. So now, this is kind of hollow on the inside, but it's not. So I know I need to go in just a little deeper than the blue here. There we go. Voila. Now we're ready to hollow. So now I've got my little hollower in here, and I also have my thickness checker. So at some point during this, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to put the flashlight in there, and when I can see through this, I'll know how thin I am. Do not go through the sides. This is like any hollowing. You'll make sure the tool is flat. That flat mark I have on there is registered now. And I want to take very gentle cuts. The lighter the cuts you take, the better chance you have of not getting a catch, not having to re-glue this thing. So we have a goal right now. We're going to try to not to have to re-glue this thing. It's cutting beautifully right now. If you hadn't swept away the sides on this, you'd be running into the side with the tool and it wouldn't be cutting. So that's why it's important to grind this just like you would a big scraper. And be very careful because you can go through these things really quickly if you're not paying attention. So I'm going to try this and see real quick if we have any light coming through. Point this up here real quick. Oh yeah, you can see a little bit of a glow there. So we're thinning it out already. This is great. So a few more cuts and I'm going to be done and taking this thing off. So of course with a Micronut, you need a micro drill to clean that little nib off the bottom. So that's pretty good right there. I don't think I'll be signing this one. So I'm just going to take a little bit of wax here just to finish up the bottom and the end right there. This is got to be one of my favorite projects that I've done in quite a while. And it's really cool. Beetle nut, B-E-T-E-L. Beetle nut, beetle nut, beetle nut. Nope, still nothing. Okay. Anyway, so that is how you make a Micronut. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed making the tools. Everything else, have fun with these when you get them. So until the next time on Wood Turning, keep turning.
Tim's American Beauty was made by Robust Tools, America's premier lathe manufacturer. Robust. Built to turn wood. Enjoyed for a lifetime.
Easy Wood Tools, best in class carbide wood turning tools.